Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are wading right into a perfect storm that's hitting the U.S. social safety net. We're talking about a massive collision of policy, market forces, and workforce shortages, and it's causing some seriously chaotic disruption. Yeah, some people are calling this a true chaos market. So what's really behind this storm? In the next few minutes, we're going to break down the causes, what it all means for the organizations on the front lines, and what the playbook for survival actually looks like.
All right, so first, let's diagnose the problem. This isn't just one single issue. It's a storm created by two really powerful colliding forces, major political shockwaves, and some pretty intense market headwinds.
First up, the policy shockwave. It's coming from a new congressional budget bill, you can see it here, called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or OBBBA for short. And believe me, it is sending tremors through the entire system with a huge projected impact on insurance coverage for millions of Americans.
And when I say huge, I mean staggering. We are talking about an additional 10 to 16 million uninsured Americans by 2034. And why is this happening? Well, it boils down to two key changes: new work requirements for Medicaid and some big adjustments to the premium supports in the Affordable Care Act.
And you can see here, this isn't some quick rip-the-band-aid off situation. These changes are being rolled out over the next decade. For states and for the providers on the ground, this means a long, sustained period of pressure and uncertainty. They're basically being forced to navigate a rulebook that's constantly changing. But you know what? Policy is only half the story. On top of all these new laws, the market itself is under incredible strain. Let's dig into the financial and operational headwinds these organizations are sailing right into.
To really get a sense of the scale here, just look at this number. Medicaid spending topped $900 billion in 2023. It is the financial backbone of the entire human services sector, which is exactly why it's now at the center of all these new funding battles and budget cuts.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Look at how that money is spent. Seniors and people with disabilities, they only make up about a quarter of the people enrolled in Medicaid. And yet, they account for over half of all the spending, mostly because of their complex health needs. This makes them, and the services they absolutely depend on, incredibly vulnerable to any changes in funding.
And if that wasn't enough, you've got a severe workforce crisis layered on top of everything else. I mean, think about this. Direct support professionals are facing a 40% annual turnover rate. A big reason why? The median wage is just over $17 an hour. The result is pretty stark. Nearly 4 out of every 10 agencies are now turning people away. Not because they don't have the funding, but because they literally do not have the staff. This number right here, this shows you just how fragile the whole system is. This is the typical operating margin for most community-based providers, 2 to 3%. That's a razor-thin buffer, and it leaves almost no room to absorb shocks from policy changes, funding cuts, or that workforce crisis we just talked about.
So in this environment of just incredible disruption, how in the world can these vital organizations possibly survive? Well, the answer seems to lie in a completely new playbook, one that requires a whole new way of thinking and really a fundamentally new business model. Okay, this is probably the most crucial point to get. The entire payment system is shifting. The old way was fee-for-service. Providers got paid for the volume of things they did. The new model is value-based. They get paid for achieving positive health outcomes, and they often have to take on the financial risk themselves. It's simple. Volume is out, value is in.
So what does that actually mean? Well, it completely changes the definition of success. It's no longer enough to just deliver a service. Now you have to prove with data that the service actually worked. You get paid for results, not just for effort. So how do organizations actually adapt? Well, experts at the advisory firm Open Minds suggest this 3-part framework. Number 1, plan for a bunch of different futures using scenario-based strategy. 2, manage your services like a financial portfolio, using data to drive every decision. And 3, you got to pursue aggressive strategic growth to build the scale you need to survive.
This new reality is forcing providers to ask a really tough question. As scale, capital, and data become totally non-negotiable for survival, a lot of them are realizing they might not have what it takes to go it alone.
And this slide is a perfect example of that new data-driven mindset in action. Organizations are now using scorecards just like this one to honestly assess their own risk across finance, strategy, and talent. A high score isn't a sign of failure. No, it's a critical signal that a partnership or a merger needs to be on the table before a crisis hits.
So what's the prognosis here?
What does this all mean for the future of the social safety net and for the millions of Americans who rely on it every single day?
This quote from an Open Minds briefing just perfectly sums up the new reality. In this chaotic environment, two things have become absolutely essential for survival: cash for financial resilience and data for sophisticated analytics. These are no longer nice-to-haves. They are the fundamental tools you need to navigate the storm.
So, at the end of the day, the key takeaway is that the ground is permanently shifted. These organizations can't just be traditional nonprofits anymore. To survive and to keep serving their communities, they have to start operating like data-driven businesses that just happen to have a powerful social mission.
And that leaves all of us with a final, critical question. This transformation, it isn't just a problem for providers and policymakers. As this whole system gets rebuilt, and as some people inevitably fall through the cracks, it really forces all of us to ask, who's responsible for catching them?